Hey, welcome to Draft Academy. My name is Mike. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk to you guys about building a guessing game in Ruby. So we're actually going to build a little game, and it's basically a game where the user can try to guess a secret word. So we'll continually prompt the user to guess a secret word, and if they get it right, then they'll get a success message like, hey, you got the word right. If they get it wrong, then we'll let them keep guessing. So they'll be able to keep guessing what the word is until they get it right. So this should be kind of cool, and this will show us how we can use something like a while loop in order to build a little game. So down here, the first thing I want to do is create a couple variables. The first variable I want to create is going to be the word that the user has to guess. So remember, we're creating a guessing game, so we need to store a variable that has the word in it, right? So I'm going to say secret underscore word, and this is just going to store that secret word, and I'm just going to set this equal to draft. So this could really be anything you want, whatever the secret word is going to be for our game. And finally, I want to create one more variable. This is going to be called guess, and we're just going to set guess equal to the empty string for now. So I have two variables, secret word and guess. And now that I have these two variables, I basically want to create a while loop. And I'm going to create a while loop that's going to continually loop through and ask the user for input. So I'm just going to say while, and over here we need to specify a condition. So again, this while loop is going to keep asking the user to input the secret word. And as long as they don't get the secret word right, we're going to keep asking them. So I'm basically going to say while guess is not equal to secret word. So as long as the user's guess isn't equal to the secret word, we're going to keep looping. So down here, what I want to do is print out a prompt. So I'm just going to say puts, and we're just going to say enter your guess. So this is going to prompt the user to enter a guess. And what we want to do now is we want to store whatever the user guesses inside of this guess variable. So I'm just going to say guess is equal to gets.chomp. And remember, chomp is basically just going to get rid of that new line at the end of whatever the user enters. So essentially what's happening here is while the user hasn't guessed correctly, while their guess isn't equal to the secret word, we're just going to prompt them again for the guess, and the guess is just going to get equal to whatever the user types in. So eventually what's going to happen is they're going to guess the word correctly. And when they do guess the word correctly, then this condition is going to be false. So we're going to come down here and we'll basically just print out a success message. So I'll just say like puts you won. All right, so this is a pretty simple program, but you'll see this actually allows us to build a guessing game inside of Ruby. So whenever we are getting input from the user in Ruby, we always want to do it through the terminals or through the command line. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my command line down here, and I'm going to run our program. So it's just called draft.rb. So I'm just going to type ruby draft.rb, and this will start executing our program. So down here you can see it's asking us to enter a guess. So I'm going to come down here and I'll enter a guess. So why don't we just enter in some nonsense. So you'll notice as long as I don't guess the word correctly, as long as I'm not entering in the correct guess, the program keeps prompting me to enter a guess, right? It keeps asking me to do that. But here's the thing, if I was to come down here and actually enter in the guess correctly, so if I typed in like draft, now we should get a success message. So when I click enter, you'll see it says you won because we entered in the secret word correctly. So obviously this is a very simple program, but it actually works pretty well and it does everything that we want it to do. This is a very simple game, and one of the problems with this game is that the user gets unlimited guesses. They can keep guessing the word forever until they get it, and that's not the makings of a good game. What would be better is if we imposed some sort of a guess limit on them. So they can only guess the word a certain number of times, otherwise they lose the game. So let's go ahead and see if we can add that functionality into our program. In order to do that, I'm going to have to create a couple more variables. The first variable I want to create is going to be called guess count. And guess count is going to basically tell us how many times the user has tried to guess the word. So I'm going to create a variable guess underscore count, and I'm just going to set this equal to 0 because initially the user won't have guessed, so the guess count will just be 0. Now down here every time the user guesses, I want to increment the guess count, right? So down here, basically this code means that the user has tried to guess the word. So every time they do that, I want to increment the guess count. I just want to say guess count plus equals 1. And this will add 1 onto the guess count. So every time they guess, we're going to increment that. And I want to create 2 more variables. The first one is going to tell us how many guesses the user can actually take. So it's going to be called guess limit. And why don't we just say the user has 3 guesses? So 3 strikes and you're out. So if they can't guess the word in 3 tries, then they're going to lose the game. All right, finally, I want to create 1 more variable. And this variable is going to tell us whether or not the user is out of guesses. So I'm just going to say out of guesses is equal to false. Because initially, the user is going to have 3 guesses, right? When the user reaches their guess limit, we're going to set this out of guesses variable equal to false, and then we'll be able to tell the user like, hey, you lost the game. All right, so now that we've created these variables, I'm just going to come down here, and inside of this while loop, we want to modify a couple things. The first thing I want to do is every time we ask the user to guess the word, I want to make sure that they're not out of guesses. In other words, I want to make sure that they haven't reached the guess limit. So I'm going to use an if statement to do that. Inside this while loop, the first thing we're going to do before we do anything else is just say if, and we want to check to make sure that the guess count is less than the guess limit. So I'm going to if guess count is less than guess limit. In other words, if the guess count is less than the guess limit, then we know they have guesses left, right? We know that they have a certain number of guesses left and they should be able to keep guessing the word. So if this is true, then I want to allow them to guess the word. So I'm just going to take all this code and we're going to move it up here. All right. So if the guess count is less than the guess limit, if they have more guesses, then we're going to do all of this. Otherwise, though, in the situation where the guess count isn't less than the guess limit, then we know for a fact that the user is out of guesses, right? That means they have no more guesses. So inside of this else statement, what I want to do is I want to set that out of guesses variable equal to true. And basically this will tell our program like, hey, the user's done. They're out of guesses, right? We checked to see if they were eligible for another guess. And if they weren't, then we're going to say out of guesses is equal to true because they ran out of guesses. All right. There's one more thing we have to do inside of this while loop, and we have to actually modify the while condition. So over here, you can see we have our little condition, and we're going to keep looping while the guess is not equal to the secret word. But now that we've imposed the guess limit, there's actually one more situation that's going to cause us to stop looping, which is when the user's out of guesses. So I want to say, I want to keep looping as long as the guess is not equal to the secret word, and as long as the user is not out of guesses. So and not out of guesses. So we're going to keep looping through this loop. We're going to keep asking the user to input information. We're going to keep doing all the code down here as long as the guess is not equal to the secret word and as long as the user is not, notice I'm using this exclamation point here, out of guesses, right? So now we have our while loop set up, right? We're able to loop through here as long as the user has guesses left. There's one more thing we have to do down here. So before, we just put U1, right? Before, if the user exited out of that while loop, that means they guessed the word correctly. So we knew for a fact that they won. But now that we're imposing the guess limit, there's actually 2 situations where the user could exit out of the loop. The first situation is where they got the word right, in which case they won. The second situation, though, is that they ran out of guesses. And if they ran out of guesses, we don't want to tell them they won, we want to tell them they lost. So we can actually check to see which situation caused that loop to end. I can just say if, and I want to check to see if they're out of guesses. And if they are out of guesses, then I'm just going to print out you lose. But otherwise, if they're not out of guesses, that means that they were able to guess the word correctly within the certain number of guesses, so they win. So this is our basic program, and let's go ahead and test it and see if it works. So again, I'm going to open up the terminal, and over here I'm just going to run the program. And actually, it looks like I'm getting an error here. Yeah, so I forgot to put an end statement down here. I always forget to do that. So always make sure that you put an end statement down here. And now we'll be able to execute our program correctly. So here we go. All right, so it says enter a guess. So why don't we just try to lose the game? So I'm just gonna enter in 1 guess, 2 guesses. Now I'm on my 3rd guess. So this is my last try. If I don't get the secret word on this try, I'm gonna lose the game. So we're gonna not get it, and it's gonna say you lose. So the program is smart enough to figure out that not only did we run out of guesses, but also that we lost. So let's try it now, but we'll try to win the game. So over here, I'm gonna make a random guess, another random guess. So now we're on our last try. It's our last chance to get the guess. I'm gonna type in the secret word, which is giraffe, and now the program's gonna tell us, hey, you won. So we were able to win the game because we guessed within the guess limit. So that is basically this program. I know this is a lot of code, so I'm just gonna step through it with you guys one more time just to kind of do a broad overview of what we did. That way you can get a better idea of what's going on. So we have these 2 variables, secret word and guess. And these 2 are pretty obvious, right? The secret word stores the word that the user needs to guess. Guess is gonna end up storing what the user guesses each time through that loop. Right? So we're gonna keep looping through this loop as long as the guess is not equal to the secret word. And down here, we're basically gonna store whatever the user guesses inside of this guess variable. That was like the basic game that we built. Then we added these 3 new variables, guess count, guess limit, and out of guesses. Guess count is basically gonna tell us how many times the user has guessed. And so every time the user guesses, we're gonna come down here, we're gonna increment it, right? Guess limit is gonna tell us how many times the user can guess. In other words, how many guesses they have available to them. And you'll see down here, we're using this if statement. So we're checking to see if the guess count is less than the guess limit. If that's true, if they still have some guesses left, then we're gonna execute all this code, we'll let them guess. Otherwise though, we're gonna use this out of guesses variable and we're gonna set it equal to true. That's gonna tell our program that the user's out of guesses. Up here, we also added another condition inside of our while loop. So we're saying while the guess isn't equal to the secret word, and while the user's not out of guesses. So that's going to allow us to control what happens in this loop. Then finally, down here, we're checking to see if they're out of guesses. So down here, there was 2 situations. The first situation was when the user ran out of guesses, so they lost the game. And if that's the case, we're just gonna print out you lose, otherwise we'll print out you won. So that's the basics of building our guessing game. So now your homework is to go off and build a guessing game of your own. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to Giraffe Academy to be the first to know when we release new content. Also, we're always looking to improve, so if you have any constructive criticism or questions or anything, leave a comment below. Finally, if you're enjoying Giraffe Academy and you want to help us grow, head over to giraffeacademy.com/contribute and invest in our future.